you ever stand somewhere so quiet that the silence itself starts to feel wrong? Like the air is holding its breath, like something out there is watching and it knows you noticed. That's what it feels like in a ghost town at midnight. Not the ghost towns in the movies, the ones with clean, dusty streets and dramatic saloon doors. I mean the real ones, the forgotten ones. Collapsed rooftops, rusted iron, floors that creak like old bones. Places where hundreds of people once lived, laughed, and died, and then simply vanished. What they left behind isn't just wood and stone. Tonight, 3 men share what happened to them in 3 different ghost towns. 3 nights they'll never forget. 3 stories that change the way they see the dark. Stay with me, because trust me, you'll want to hear all of them.
My name's Dale Mercer. I'm 52 years old. I run a small auto repair shop in Flagstaff, Arizona. I'm not a man who believes in the supernatural, or at least I wasn't, not until the summer of 2019, when my buddy Travis dragged me out to a place called Harlow's Gulch. Harlow's Gulch was a silver mining town in the late 1800s. Boom, bust, abandoned by 1903. The kind of place urban explorers love. Travis had been going on about it for months, said there were still intact buildings, original furniture, even a player piano still sitting in what used to be a saloon. I figured we'd spend a night, take some photos, head home with a good story. I had no idea the story would be this kind of good. We arrived just before sundown. The drive-in was rough, no paved road, just a gravel trail disappearing into scrubland. The town emerged from the desert like a mirage. Buildings the color of bone, a water tower listing hard to the left, and right there on what used to be the main drag, Copper Street, the old sign still nailed to a crumbling post, a 2-story saloon, its windows black and gaping like hollow eyes. We set up camp in what looked like a former general store. Sleeping bags, lanterns, the whole setup. Travis was in good spirits, cracking jokes, snapping photos. I'll admit, I was having fun too. There's something infectious about a place that old. It holds history in its walls. You can almost hear the echoes. Almost. We ate dinner around 9. By 10, Travis was out cold. I wasn't tired. I took my lantern and decided to walk over to the saloon, just to look around. The front door was unlocked, or rather, the lock had rusted clean off decades ago. I pushed inside. The smell hit me first, dust and rot, and something faintly sweet, like old whiskey soaked into the floorboards and never quite left. The bar was still there, scarred and dark, bottles long empty. Behind the bar, a cracked mirror, and in the corner, just like Travis had said, a player piano, upright, black-lacquered, keys yellowed like old teeth. I walked up to the piano, put my lantern down beside it, just stared at it. And then it played. One note, low, slow, resonant, like someone pressing a single key with one deliberate finger. I froze. I told myself it was the wood settling, temperature change, something mechanical. I looked around the saloon. Nobody there. Windows dark, door still. I exhaled, stepped back. It played again. 3 notes this time, the same 3 notes, in a row, like a phrase looking for the rest of a melody. I picked up my lantern, and that's when I saw it in the cracked mirror behind the bar. A figure, tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, standing right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just the empty saloon, dust floating in my lantern light. I'm not ashamed to tell you, I ran. I ran back to Travis, woke him up, and told him exactly what I'd seen. He thought I was half asleep, had imagined it, but the next morning, when we went back to take photos in daylight, I found something on the dusty floor in front of that piano. Boot prints, old-fashioned boot prints, narrow-toed, with a stacked heel, facing the piano. And they stopped right there, like whoever made them had simply ceased to exist. Travis took photos, still has them. Neither of us has been back to Harlow's Gulch. Some echoes, I've decided, are better left unheard.
I go by Marcus Webb. I'm a landscape photographer, 38 years old. I've spent more nights alone in the wilderness than most people have spent outdoors at all. Caves, abandoned factories, derelict hospitals, I've photographed them all. I thought I'd seen enough to be unshakable. I was wrong. In October 2021, I drove out to a place in the Nevada desert called Sutter's Hollow. It had been a small ranching and trade town in the 1870s and 1880s. A flash flood in 1891 wiped out half the population. The survivors left and never came back. What remained was now accessible only by a dirt road that my truck handled badly, rattling my teeth the whole way in. I arrived just past midnight. I'd planned it that way, wanted to shoot long exposure photos under the stars with the ghost town silhouette in the foreground. There is no better backdrop for night photography than a forgotten place. The darkness there is different, complete, the kind that swallows a flashlight beam at 20 feet. I set up near what used to be the sheriff's office. It was one of the better preserved buildings, adobe-style construction, surprisingly solid walls. The door was jammed, not locked. I worked it open with my shoulder and slipped inside. Inside, a desk, a chair with 3 legs leaning against the wall, an empty rifle rack, and still mounted on the wall, a wanted poster. I walked up to it and held up my flashlight. The face was barely visible, the paper brown and fragile, but the printed text below was still legible. Wanted, dead or alive. I almost laughed. It was like stepping into a museum nobody had curated. I went back outside and started shooting. 2 hours went by. I was deep in the work, adjusting exposure settings, completely absorbed. Then I heard a door. The specific creak of a specific door, the sheriff's office, the door I had forced open and left ajar. It was closing, slowly, deliberately. I told myself, wind, there's always wind in the desert at night. But the air was dead still, not a breath. I walked over. The door was closed. I opened it again and shone my flashlight inside. The 3-legged chair was no longer against the wall. It was in the center of the room, facing the desk, like someone had set it there and sat down. I am a rational person. I set my camera down. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, doing the mental exercise of explaining what I was seeing. Wind? A slope on the floor? An animal? I was mid-thought when something knocked on the wall. 2 knocks from inside, where I was looking. I picked up my camera. I picked up my bag. I walked. I did not run. I walked back to my truck, got in, locked the doors, sat there for a long time, staring at the sheriff's office. No more knocks, no more movement, just the building sitting there in the dark, patient as a stone. I pulled out my phone and looked up the history of Sutter's Hollow later that night, and I found something that made my throat tighten. The last sheriff of Sutter's Hollow, a man named Roland Fitch, had refused to leave after the flood. He stayed alone in that office for nearly 3 years, keeping order over a town of ghosts. He died there in 1894, alone at his desk. The chair in the center of the room, facing the desk. Tell me that's the wind. My name is Eli Tanner. I'm 29. I work in construction now, but back in 2022, I was doing a road trip across the Southwest. The kind of trip you take when you're young and restless and think you've got nothing to fear because you haven't been scared yet. Near the Utah-Nevada border, I found a place called Broken Ridge on a ghost town enthusiast forum online. The thread was old, last post from 2015, and it described a mining town from the 1880s with a partially intact mine entrance still visible on the hillside above the ruins. The forum poster called it the most unsettling place I've ever visited. He didn't say why. I figured it was just dramatic talk. I was there by 11 at night. I'd been driving all day and wasn't even planning to camp, just wanted to look around, take some video on my phone, keep moving. The town itself was mostly rubble, a few walls, a collapsed church steeple lying on its side like a felled tree, and up the hill, exactly where the post had described, the mine entrance, a dark rectangle cut into the rock face, framed by rotting timber. Darkness beyond it, like a held breath. I hiked up. I want to be honest here. I felt something before I even reached the entrance. Not fear, exactly. Something more animal than that.
a pressure in my chest, a voice in the back of my head, quiet, insistent, saying, "Go back." I've had gut feelings before and ignored them. I ignored this one too. I shone my flashlight into the mine. The beam traveled maybe 40 feet down the shaft before the dark swallowed it. Timber supports, rusted iron track for the ore carts still running down the center, and the smell, cold air and iron, and something damp that had no business being in a desert. I took maybe 10 steps in. That's when I heard breathing. Not an echo of my own, slower, steadier, from deeper in the shaft. I stopped walking, held my own breath. It continued. In, out, in, out. Whatever was breathing in there was doing so with enormous, slow, deliberate patience. I backed up, 1 step, 2, 3, and then a voice said my name. Not loudly, barely over a whisper, but clear, unmistakable. My name, Eli, spoken from somewhere in that darkness. I had not told a single person where I was going that night. My phone had no signal. There was no one who should have known I was there. I ran. I'm not embarrassed. Any person who hears their name called from the dark of an empty mine shaft runs. I made it back to my truck in what must have been record time. I sat there shaking, engine running, headlights on, pointed at the road out. And that's when I saw a man walking slowly down the hill from the mine entrance. Old clothes, a miner's helmet, the old kind with a carbide lamp, walking at that same deliberate, patient pace down the hill toward my truck. I left fast. I've thought about it every day since. I've tried every explanation, a squatter, a local with a grudge against trespassers, sound traveling in the rock in some strange way. None of it sticks. None of it explains how anyone down in that mine knew my name. Broken Ridge. If you ever find it on a map, don't go at night. Actually, don't go at all. Some things that were abandoned for a reason. Some doors in this world shouldn't be opened. And some mines never stop working. They just change what they dig for.
3 men, 3 towns swallowed by time, 3 encounters that no rational explanation has yet managed to put to rest. The Wild West wasn't just outlaws and gold rushes and open skies. It was also desperate men dying in the dark. It was communities built on the edge of survival, erased by floods and disease and time. The ghosts didn't leave just because the people did. If you've had your own encounter in a ghost town, an abandoned place, anywhere the past presses too close to the present, you know exactly what these men are talking about. That feeling, that certainty. The dark doesn't hide nothing. It just hides things we haven't learned to see yet. Stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't go in alone.